This is a Porsche 911 RSR sporting the iconic pink pig livery that originated on a Porsche 917 in 1971. This car won the 2018 iteration of the greatest race in the world. And this model is from Sparky. And this is a company that does die-cast models and specializes in reproducing accurate race liveries, accurate versions of the race cars and the race liveries. So this particular model, as I mentioned, is a 911 RSR. More specifically, this is a 911 RSR GTE car. And when we look at this car, we can clearly see that this car is a Porsche. It looks like a Porsche. And if we put it together with a lineup of other Porsches from earlier generations, we can clearly see that it fits within this lineage pretty well. So we're going to take a look at each of these cars, but before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the race. And the race I'm talking about should be obvious, and if you know this car, then it's very obvious. So this is a Ford GT40, and the race I'm talking about is, of course, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I've been absolutely fascinated with this race since the early 80s, and the cars have always been just one of my favorite race cars of all time, in just about every era that they've come out. And so, you know, the Ford GT40 is very famous, especially because of the recent movie Ford versus Ferrari. And if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It's obviously an overly dramatized kind of thing, but it's a good enough representation of the story of the races in the late 60s when the Ford GT40s were competing with the Ferraris at Le Mans. So we're going to set this here, and we also have Enzo Ferrari here supervising, and as usual showing his displeasure at the fact that this video is not going to contain any Ferrari race cars. This is going to be focused on Porsche race cars, which will be, make him very unhappy. All right, so let's return to our lineup and take a look at these cars. Oh, wait, what was that? Oh, I'm sorry. Enzo has requested an upgrade to his seating position. So I think that'll make him much happier. So, moving on. From the 60s, we have a 911. This is a Tomica Limited Vintage. They don't specify the specific year on this car, but it's clearly a, early or first generation Porsche 911. So I think the 911 came out in 1963. So this one was, somewhere between 63 and 70-ish whenever they changed to the next generation. Then from Schuco, we have a 911 Turbo from 1975, and Schuco is another very beautiful maker of die-cast cars. And then we're going to cheat a little bit with this one. So for the 80s, this is actually a roof CTR, but this is based on a 1980s Porsche 911, and roof is a aftermarket customizer of Porsches, I guess you could say, although there's a little bit more to the story than that. But this is, the lines of this car are consistent with a 1980s Porsche 911. And then in the 90s and 2000s and so on, I don't have any premium versions of those 911s. I do have some Hot Wheels. So like we have the 1996 Hot Wheels, this Carrera, the Carrera. But this car is a little bit out of scale. It's a little bit too large, so when you sit it in here, it doesn't really fit very well. But this one is an absolutely beautiful Carrera S from Mini GT. This is one of my favorite recent pickups, and I just love this car. And then also from Mini GT, we have the 911 GT2, which is where we're starting to get a car that looks very much like a race car. Although obviously this is still a road car. So when we put the 911 RSR together with these cars, it fits. You can see the lineage. And these two are GT3 versions of the 911 as well. There's just two different generations. This is a little bit of an older version of the 911 GT3, and then this is a little bit newer version of the 911 GT3, and both of these are also from Sparky. And if you've never checked out Sparky as a brand, and if you have any interest in race cars at all, I highly recommend that you do, because they make by far the best race cars in 1/64 scale. Although, I mean, I suppose, you know, Tarmac Works may want to disagree with that assessment, but Sparky, let me rephrase that as Sparky provides the best value for your dollar in 1/64 scale race cars, because they cost about half as much as a Tarmac Works would. But okay, so we were talking about Porsches and the lineage, and how this 911 RSR fits into the design of the 911. But Porsche has also had other race cars along, you know, that have run at Le Mans, and these are a whole different kind of thing. So this is another model from Sparky, and these recently came out, and this is a Porsche 956 in this very cool Spirit of America livery. And the 956 ran at Le Mans in actually for quite a while, from the early 1980s through the probably the late 90s in some version. These cars were heavily modified through time, and but they ran for a very long period of time, and were competitive for a surprisingly long period of time. So this particular one was from 1986, and this ran at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1986 and finished third. So not a particular car of distinction, but we're not really concerned about how well the car performed in the race. We were just concerned with the model. And this is these Sparkies, and this is a brand new Sparky. So this one's even nicer, I think, than some of the more recent releases that they've put out. The wheels on this are absolutely fantastic. It's incredible detail for a 1/64 scale model. And you know, the livery and the car itself, they've just done an absolutely great job on this. And so this is a 956, and as far as I know, Sparky and then maybe Kyosho, I think Kyosho has a version of either the 956 or the 962. And then Hot Wheels has a version of this car that they call the Porsche 962. So that would be this one, and it's actually probably not far off from 1/64 scale. So the single biggest difference between a 956 and a 962 was a change that was made to allow the cars to run in IMSA competition in the United States. In the 956, the driver's feet sat or stuck out in front of the axle. And in IMSA regulations, they required that the driver's feet did not stick out in front of the axle. So they had to extend the car a little bit to come up with the 962, to move the driver's feet back. So that's the primary difference. I'm sure there's other differences, but you know, I have been looking at these cars and looked at many models and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And to this day, I still couldn't tell you at a glance, you know, when a car is a 956 and when it is a 962. They are very similar looking cars. But the cars did run with various different, you know, aero packages and so on. So this one has a what's called the long tail configuration, which is basically a smaller wing at the back. That's a lower drag configuration. And the Hot Wheels 962 also has this. So unfortunately, I don't have the alternative version to show you, because I don't know of anybody who's put that out in 1/64 scale. But they would have run this aero package at Le Mans, because Le Mans is a very high speed track, especially in the 80s when this car ran, because this is the Mulsanne straight at that time was just a long straight. I mean, it has a kink in it, but it was it was, I think it's, what is it, 8 point some miles long, and the cars would run flat out for the entire thing. Now they've introduced 2 chicanes in it to slow the cars down, but in the 80s those did not exist. So these, low downforce configuration was absolutely critical, and it still is to this day, because Le Mans is just a high-speed track. But anyway, I know we're here to look at the cars. We're not really here to talk about the race. So we're going to move on to some other Porsche models. Also from Sparky. Actually, everything we're going to look at today is from Sparky. So this is another 956. This one from 1983 in the Kenwood livery. And if you're not familiar with Sparky, they come with these very cool bases where you just twist this thing, and if you're lucky, oh, it was already undone. If you're lucky, and apparently I'm going to be unlucky. Since I tried to highlight this, I'm going to be unlucky in getting this off the base. It's a slotted system where normally you can just twist this and it will release from the base. But this one is, there's something off with it. There it goes. Okay, so you can see there's a little notch on there that you just have to get it aligned right, and then it releases, which is a pretty cool system. But I take the cars off the base, and I want to keep them loose. This Kenwood livery is a car that I remember seeing race. None of these cars that we're going to be looking at were factory cars. This Hot Wheels, at the time when the 956s were running at Le Mans, this Hot Wheels actually has the livery that's the closest to what they actually ran. It was a Rothman's livery, so they can't actually use that branding on the car, but the paint scheme and so on is fairly similar. But yeah, this Kenwood, again, these wheels are just fantastic for 1/64 scale wheels, and this car overall is just very, very cool looking. So they've done painted headlights in here with some curved plastic pieces on top of it, which would be very realistic for the way that the headlights work. Is it's a 24-hour race, so one of the critical elements of all the cars is very, very powerful lighting, and there are no track lights on the Mulsanne Straight at that time, so it was very, very dark and at night, and just fantastic cars. When I saw that Sparky was bringing out some more of these, I was super excited, because the older ones that they had done before were fairly hard to get, and I am a huge fan of the 956 and 962s. Not my favorite of these cars, but this era of car, that would be the Jaguar XJRs. There were various versions of those, but the Porsche is definitely up there. And these cars ran at Le Mans. They were to a set of rules called Group C, and the interesting thing about Group C was the primary criteria, or not criteria, but one of the key limitations of Group C was focused on fuel economy. So the cars ran, and this has actually been from the very beginning, even back in the 20s when the 24 Hours of Le Mans was first run. Fuel economy has always been an important part of the rule sets that were applied to the cars. And so the last of these 956s that I have is this one in this Boss livery. This one is just absolutely fantastic. Another car that I remember seeing in races of the time, and this one again ran in 1983. And Hugo Boss is a fashion designer, and so this has pinstripes, like a pinstripe suit, and just gorgeous, just an absolutely gorgeous livery. Love this car. Was so happy to see this. So they have, they brought out these first 3. I think there's at least 3 more coming, and that's the benefit or the beauty of them doing this. This 956 is that this car ran in probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different liveries, because it ran not only at Le Mans, but it ran in sports car series all around the world. It ran in the United States, it ran in Africa, it ran in Japan, and I'm sure in Australia, and probably all over the Far East, as well as Europe, you know, everywhere. So, but again, just absolutely beautiful livery. So, not, you know, definitely, you know, when you look at these cars, this, you know, is this a Porsche? It sure doesn't look like one. But, you know, because these were prototypes, that's what they were called, and that's what they're still called to this day. And very fascinating series, because these cars represent the best of what the, you know, the manufacturers could come up with at the time. And so to follow on from that, we have a couple more Porsches to look at, and these are even more wacky than the 956s are. This is a Porsche 919, which is a LMP1 car that ran at Le Mans in, well, it was 2014. These cars ran 2014 through 2017. And LMP1 is the top class in the Le Mans race that came, you know, quite a few years after Group C ended. There were probably, you know, 4 or 5 other rules revisions in there between the time when these cars ran and when these 919s ran. But these modern cars are even more removed from, you know, the typical, you know, Porsche 911. Even though these cars run together, you know, these, you know, 24 hours of Le Mans, you will have multiple classes of cars running at the same time. So you will have this car running together with these cars, and you know, obviously this is much faster vehicle. But these cars are just an absolutely fascinating design. I think they kind of epitomize function over form, because these are really not very attractive vehicles. They're, you know, I've learned to appreciate them as, you know, as I've seen the various different versions of them, and you know, and just, you know, and because I just have an appreciation for the technology and the design of the cars and how they utilize the aero and all of those kind of things. But, you know, let's be realistic. These cars are ugly. and that applies to all of the LMP1 cars, you know. So this, you know, we have the Porsche, and then, you know, like this is the Toyota, and I think the Toyota is even maybe a little bit uglier. They're fairly similar in design, but yeah, but not lookers. That is for sure. There is no elegance and beauty in these cars. They are 100% performance and nothing else. And a lot of it is driven by these, you know, enormous wheel wells, and, you know, so that they can have these massive lighting arrays in the front. And these cars, I've actually driven in a simulator. I've driven, you know, a version of this car, and the visibility, like if you look in virtual reality, so the visibility out of this car is just terrible. You can barely see anything to the sides and to the front and what have you. It's amazing to me that they are able to race these cars in, you know, in something like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where they race regardless of the weather and regardless of whether it's daylight or nighttime or whatever, with such limited visibility out of the car. But these 919s are something that I've, you know, from pretty much from the moment that I started collecting, I wanted to get my hands on these, and I'm very happy that I finally have been able to do that. So even though these cars are ugly, I love them. I think they're so cool. And so quickly, I have 2. So these 2 ran together the same year. They actually ran the car in 3 different colors that year. Which specific year were these from? 2015. So in 2015 they ran a white one, a red one, and then the black one. And I believe the white one is the one that actually won the race that year, if I'm correct. And I do not have the white one, unfortunately. I would like to get that one as well. And you can see that the livery it says Porsche on here. And it actually says Porsche Performance, I believe. Yeah. Oh yeah, so the livery's the same on these. It's a fascinating thing. Yeah, so, I mean, I actually think I like this one better. The red one's very cool, but the black one, yeah, I think I like the black one better. But these are just fantastic models. Sparky does a great job. Incredible detail, and they're very accurate. And, you know, at least for the ones that they bring into the United States, which aren't these I had to order internationally, but they're not very expensive. I believe that these Porsche 956s are maybe $15 or $18 at the most, which for the quality of the model is a bargain, really. You know, if you compare it to a lot of other things, and they may even be less than that. I know that some of I have quite a few Sparkies now, and some of them have been at more around $10. I think some of the Porsche, maybe the GT3 cars, like this one, I think maybe this was around $10, which is for the level of detail in these models, that's absolutely a bargain, like I said. So, all right, yeah, I guess that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Hopefully this has been informative and you found this at least somewhat interesting. And so I say thank you, and Enzo says thank you, and he's very happy that he has a gun pointed at that GT40 there. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe and all that kind of good stuff, and I will talk to you next time.